Welcome to the tutorial over 1-4 solving absolute value equations. Your new vocabulary is going to be the absolute value, the empty set, constraint, and extraneous solution. First of all, let's talk about what an absolute value is. And it's an absolute value of a number is its distance from 0 on the number line. Distance is never negative, so hence it's going to be positive. The way we represent the absolute value are the double bars with an X between them. Okay, so that's how you represent Y equals the absolute value of X. And usually you can represent it on a graph, and it should look like a V. Okay, so the absolute value on a graph is this V. Because if you notice, if we go 1, the absolute value of 1 is 1, so it's on the graph. Absolute value of 2 is 2. Absolute value of 3 is 3. And if you go in the negative direction, well, the absolute value of negative 1, meaning the distance from 0, is 1. So that's why we graphed negative 1, 1. Absolute value of negative 2, it's still positive 2. Absolute value of negative 3 is 3. So hence, that's how we get this nice V curve. Sorry, V function. All right, the next vocabulary word is the empty set. That's when an equation doesn't have a solution. It is denoted by the empty set, and you use brackets, well, braces, and you denote it like that, or a 0 with the line slash through it. That's how you represent the empty set, and that means no solution. A constraint is a condition that a solution must satisfy. And the last vocabulary word that you're going to learn is extraneous solution. Even if you've used the correct procedure for solving an equation, not all the answers may be actual solutions according to the constraints for the original equation. Those type of solutions are extraneous solutions. Now looking at the key concept of absolute value in words for any real number A, if A is positive or 0, the absolute value of A is A. If A is negative, the absolute value of A is the opposite of A. So meaning it's always going to turn out positive no matter what the number is. In symbols, for any real number A, the absolute value of A is equal to A. If A is greater than or equal to 0, and if it happens to be less than or equal to 0, it's going to be equal to negative A. Okay? And the model you see here, these are types of equations you'll see. The absolute value of negative 4 is 4, and the absolute value of 4 is 4. And that just means, if you take a look at this number line, we're just talking about the distance from that number to 0. That is the absolute value. That's the key concept that you need to understand. So for our first example, we're going to evaluate 2.7 plus the absolute value of 6 minus 2x if x is 4. And all we're going to do is plug in what we know. So here I've written 2.7 plus the absolute value of 6 minus 2 times 4. And notice I use parentheses. Now we're going to follow our order of operations. And out to the side I'm going to put what I actually did for that line. So our next step is going to be to multiply 2 and 4. And that's going to give me 2.7 plus the absolute value of 6 minus 8. Our next step is going to be to subtract 8 from 6, because we're going to think of these kind of as parentheses. We can't add the 2.7 yet before we take care of what's inside our absolute values. And that's going to give us 2.7 plus the absolute value of negative 2. From here, we know that the absolute value of a negative number is actually going to be the positive of that number. So the absolute value of negative 2 is just 2. And our last step is to add 2.7 and 2, and that's going to give us 4.7 as our answer. Now I would like you to try a problem. For our second example, we're going to solve the absolute value of y plus 3 is equal to 8. Now, when you have something that looks like this, you have two cases that you'll have. you'll have that your absolute value is going to equal your positive value 8, or the absolute value is going to equal to negative 8. When we check our solutions, we are actually going to drop our absolute value signs, because here we're going to try it in two different ways. We are going to first do the case of y plus 3 equals positive 8. In this case, b is 8. And on case number 2, we're going to say y plus 3 is equal to negative 8. Okay, so on these, you're going to set them up the same way every time. Alright, so go ahead and solve your one step. On case number 1, we want to subtract 3 from both sides of the equal sign, and we get y is equal to 5. And on case number 2, we want to subtract 3 from both sides, and we get y is equal to negative 11. Now, the next thing you need to do is you need to plug these back in and make sure they're not extraneous solutions. Okay, so if I take the absolute value of 5 plus 3, we want to make sure it actually equals 8. Okay, so 5 plus 3 is 8, and we get the absolute value of 8, which is 8. So 8 is equal to 8, so this for sure is one of our solutions. Now let's take a look at the other side. If we plug into the absolute value, negative 11 plus 3, and we want it to equal 8. Negative 11 plus 3 is negative 8. The absolute value of negative 8 pops out positive. 8 is equal to 8. So this indeed is one of our solutions as well. Now, the way you're actually going to write this is in set notation. So you're going to write your curly brackets, okay? Whichever is the lowest or the smallest number, in this case is negative 11, that's going to go first, comma, and then we have 5. Okay, so now we're showing that we have two solutions, and that's our answer. Now I would like you to try an example. Example number 3. It says solve the absolute value of 6 minus 4t plus 5 equal to 0. First thing you want to do when you have something like this, you want to get the absolute value by itself. So anything that's attached on the same side you need to get rid of. So first we're going to subtract negative 5 from each side. And we get absolute value of 6 minus 4t is equal to negative 5. Now, the problem here, anything that I plug in for t, and I take the absolute value, when I take the absolute value of something, it has to be a positive number. Now, if you take a look here, it says the absolute value is going to equal to negative 5. Now, some of you might be a little confused because you were like, oh, look, here we have a is equal to negative b. We are not saying that the absolute value of y plus 3 is equal to negative 8. No, we dropped these and we were saying stuff on the inside is equal to negative 8. Okay, so please don't get that confused. You cannot say that absolute value is equal to a negative number. You can say that the inside stuff is equal to a negative number. So when we have something with the absolute value signs and it's equal to a negative number, that's going to give us no solution because that can never happen. Okay, and remember how we show the empty set. We either have brackets with nothing in them, or you can say no solution with the 0 and a slash through it. Now it's your turn. Example number 4. Solve the absolute value of 8 plus y is equal to negative y minus 3. Now, thinking back to example number 2, we're going to have two cases that we need to actually check. We're going to have case number 1, where a is equal to b. And remember, that's meaning that the stuff on the inside of the absolute value sign is what I'm calling a. So in this case, a is equal to a plus y. Okay, just want to get that across right there. Okay, and then we have case number 2 where a is equal to negative b. So let's try case number 1 first. So the first one I'm going to try, I'm just going to drop the absolute value signs and get 8 plus y is equal to 2y minus 3. And I'm going to go ahead and set up case number 2 while we're on this step. We're going to say that 8 plus y is equal to negative parentheses 2y minus 3. And the reason why we did that is because when we say b, we're saying everything on this side of the equal sign is represented by b. Everything on the inside of the absolute value signs is represented by a. Okay? Alright, so back to case number 1. Now all we're going to do is solve for y. I'm going to subtract 1y from each side, and I'm going to get 8 is equal to y minus 3, and here I'm going to add 3 to both sides of the equal sign to where I get 11 is equal to y. Okay? Now before I say that it's a solution, I'm going to have to plug it back in and check my solution. Okay? Let's look at case number 2. Now, here when we have a negative on the outside of the parentheses, we're going to have to distribute that. So 8 plus y is equal to negative 2y plus 3. So kind of a shortcut you can think of this. When you distribute a negative, it changes the sign of everything on the inside of the parentheses. Okay? So now we're going to go ahead and solve for y again. This time I'm going to add 2y to both sides. And I'm going to get 8 plus 3y is equal to 3. I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides to where I get 3y is equal to negative 5. And I'm going to divide both sides by 3 because I need y by itself. So here I have y is equal to negative 5/3. Now, before I can say that's an actual solution, I'm going to have to plug them both back in. So I'm going to clear all this so I can have some room. So let's start with case number 1. If I have the absolute value of 8 plus, and in this case we're saying y is 11, so 8 plus 11 is equal to 2 times 11 minus 3. And we're actually checking to see if this is equal. Well, we know that 8 plus 11 is 19, so we have the absolute value of 19 is equal to 2 times 11 is 22 minus 3. Last step, 22 minus 3 is 19. So if we take the absolute value of 19, we know that whatever's on the inside of the absolute values is going to pop out positive. So in this case, 19 is actually indeed equal to 19. So 11 is one of our solutions. Alright, let's try case number 2. With an absolute value of 8 plus negative 5/3 is equal to 2 times negative 5/3 minus 3. Okay, so let's do some simplification. 8 plus negative 5/3 is actually 19/3 equals 2 times negative 5/3. 2 times negative 5 is 10, so we have negative 10/3 minus 3. If we were to get a common denominator between 10/3 and 3, we would get the absolute value of 19/3 is equal to negative 19/3. And the problem is when you take the absolute value, this is actually 19/3. And that is not equal to negative 19/3. So in this case, we only have one solution, which is y is 11. And remember, the way you write that is with your brackets, 11, and that's going to be your only solution. Now you try an example. Thank you for watching this tutorial over 1-4. See you in the next video.